With the landscape of racing games on the PlayStation, there is one series that really does stand out among the masses, and that is with the Formula 1 series. There would be many games of this type that would be created by multiple developers over the years, but I think that the original 2 Formula 1 games, which I have covered in previous videos, there'll be links in the description, are the ones that set the stage but also captured the magic of the real life events. And in all honesty, everything that came after it couldn't come close, but it's not to say that it wasn't for one to try it. After Formula 1 97's huge success, Bizarre Creations would then leave the franchise to go on to do other things, which would lead Psygnosis to look for a different developer, which under the form of Visual Sciences for Formula 1 98, and as we all know, that didn't work out the way that it could have done. Now, I'd like to think that it's an okay game to a degree. For me, it's not the worst racer I've ever played. In fairness, it's not, but it's definitely not the best Formula 1 game. But regardless, by the time 1999 came around, Psygnosis decided that they needed to take things up a notch and try to recapture some of that magic. So they went with a team under the name of Studio 33, who would also be responsible for the very popular Newman Haas Racing IndyCar racing game that was developed the previous year, that would also have a lot of similar gameplay features and even visuals to the first 2 Formula 1 games. And I remember my younger brother having that game over the years growing up, and it was a solid racer, and it was a lot better than a lot of these other type of kart racers or Formula 1 games on the system. I did cover that on a previous video way back in the early days of the channel. Again, I'll leave a link in the description. So with Studio 33, it was their job to try and recapture that magic with Formula 1 99, and they managed to do that to a certain degree. They also added in the elements of having substitute drivers, which was a thing that actually happened in the 99 season, where you had certain racers replacing big names that were obviously suspended, with the likes of Michael Schumacher for like most of the season, so you had other racers to fit in. But what this game also added in was a grid editor tool, so you could introduce and customise the starting grid to your own liking before the race. Although there was a lack of an arcade mode and some other additions that would have been in previous games, but the focus on the core gameplay was definitely back to near its best in most regards. And the game was well received among critics and magazines, although while not as heavily publicised in terms of overall scores when we look at the first 2 games from Psygnosis, it still did a good job. And in all honesty, when we look at the sea of Formula 1 games that are on the PlayStation, if you take the first 2 games out of the equation, Formula 1 99 is without a doubt one of the greatest Formula 1 games on the console. And the funny thing is, it's the one game that's very rarely ever talked about, because people often refer to the likes of the first 2 games and then they look at the likes of how bad Formula 1 98 was. Very few people ever really talk about Formula 1 99 and how good it was. Like for me personally, while it wasn't as good as the first 2 games, it was a very, very good, solid experience and a true return to form. Now I remember buying this game, it was out a couple of months and I got it fairly cheap. I won't say where though, but I definitely got it on the cheap. And I played it and I have to say I enjoyed it. Now it was very, very different in terms of its overall visual presentation and how the game handled. It took a while to get used to, but it was definitely leaps and bounds over Formula 1 98. But in fairness to it, for its time, I thought it looked stunning.
Oh my word! A bit of a coming together there. He's absolutely flying round this circuit.
It was right up there with the best of any type of visually stunning games that had been seen on the PlayStation at that time. Graphically, this game is very, very good, but there's a great balance in the gameplay. It presents enough challenge that makes it fun, but at the same time not too easy. It's an all-round very good and solid racer in all respects to it, it really is. Even with regards to like the replay modes as well, it does look almost realistic to a degree. And see, if you play it in modern days, even with an emulator, graphically it looks superb, especially if you're wanting to play it with visual tweaks just to make it look more appealing. feeling. But even in its standard format, on its original resolutions, or even if you're playing on original hardware, the game still looks really, really cool. For me, it's still one of the best looking and visually stunning racing games on the PlayStation. And yes, for me, it definitely is one of the best racers on the console, but it's often the one, like I said, that's nobody talks about, that's often overlooked, and I can never understand why. I'd say at that point what would have happened is that when Formula 1 98 came out, because when you look at the likes of 1998, is often considered as one of the greatest, if not the greatest year of video games, especially on the PlayStation. You had Gran Turismo. While yes, it did come out in Japan in 1997, it didn't hit North America and Europe until 1998, and that just blew everything out of the water. But then you had Colin McRae Rally, you had a load of other mainstream games, so you were nearly always expecting a Formula 1 game that had such a high caliber going into it from previous titles to capture that same magic, and for it to flop the way that it did, it was just crazy when you think about it. So I suppose something had to be done to recapture that magic so that it could reclaim its throne, because it would have got knocked off very, very quickly had they not done that. And in fairness, this game managed to do that. And while there would be other games with the likes of Formula 1 2000, Formula 1 2001, even with Formula 1 Arcade, and even some of the EA or Electronic Arts entries, which were good solid titles in their own right, and I thought they were very, very good, and I will be covering them in future videos. But at the same time, Formula 1 99 is just as good as any of those games, in my personal opinion anyway. So it's funny, the older games generally, well, if you take 98 out of the equation, the older games genuinely are the best when it comes to the Formula 1 games, which is mad to think, and there's so many of these games that were released on the console. It's crazy. Like when you really think about it, take even the PlayStation 2 out of the equation, both of those consoles have probably got the largest catalogue of Formula 1 games in existence. There's just so many of them, it's crazy. But at the same time, there is something there for everybody. There's some really good titles, some excellent titles, some mediocre, and then some obviously not so good. But in saying that, there's something there for everybody. There really is. But I genuinely think this is one of the better racers on the system. And even going back to capture footage to play for this video, I found myself getting back into it again. Yes, it was tricky, but again, like a lot of these games, it gets quite addictive very, very quickly. And you just kept wanting to play more and play more, and you get to a point where you nearly had to pull yourself away from it because you were enjoying the game that much and you've forgotten how good it was. So that will tell you and give you pretty much an idea, and is a testament to the development of the game. But in saying that, it's not without its flaws. Like when you look at the collision detection, when you hit a car, sometimes it bounces around and the car sometimes stops dead. If there's one major gripe with it, I think that's it. The collision detection compared to previous games definitely could have been improved, but still it's a massive improvement over what did come the year before it. But in saying that, like I said, I could go on and on. It's a good solid racer, but regardless of what I think, I would love to know your thoughts of Formula 1 99 for the PlayStation. What did you think of it overall? Would this be your favourite Formula 1 game on the system, or one of your favourites? So be sure to share it down in the comments below. And if you would like to see more content around other Formula 1 games that were also released on the console, you can check out this playlist here on screen to see more of those games in action. And as always, keep those gaming memories alive.